Look at this photo of Bangalore in 2005. At its core, it's a densely packed metropolis, humming with life, traffic, and noise. There's an inherent safety in numbers here. But step away from the city center, and that safety vanishes. The industrial transit outposts on the edge of the city were completely cut off from the rest of the world. That extreme isolation was the nightly reality for a man named Venkatappa. He was an ordinary family man, a husband and a father to an 8-year-old boy named Kishore, who worked the graveyard shift as a railway gateman. This photograph shows the exact kind of environment he operated in at the Yeshwanthpur crossing. Late at night, thick fog rolls in, visibility drops to near zero, and the sheer emptiness of the tracks leaves a single gateman entirely alone in the dark. Lowering a boom barrier to stop passing cars is a simple, predictable routine. But when sudden, chaotic human violence arrives at an empty crossing, a uniform and a logbook offer zero protection. 10 minutes before a scheduled train, a white sedan pulled up to Venkatappa's crossing. The driver stepped out, popped the trunk, and 2 other men dragged out a young woman. Her hands and feet were bound, and her mouth was taped shut. Venkatappa grabbed a heavy wooden stick from his booth and charged toward them, yelling to stop. But before he could swing, the driver slipped behind him. A cold blade pressed hard against his throat. The driver made the terms clear: make a sound and die right here. Venkatappa stood completely paralyzed as the other 2 men dragged the struggling girl directly onto the steel rails. In a fraction of a second, he had to calculate an impossible problem. He could fight back, likely bleed out in the dirt, and leave his 8-year-old son without a father. Or he could stay silent, let a stranger die, and survive the night. As the deafening roar of the train echoed down the tracks, Venkatappa shoved the driver away, grabbed a nearby bicycle, and fled. By the time he returned with help, the train had passed. The heavy night fog shown in this photograph had completely swallowed the killers without a trace. Venkatappa survived the physical threat. He kept his life and returned to his family. But walking away while someone else was brutally killed created a massive psychological fracture, a vacuum in his mind that extreme trauma immediately began to fill. Following the police investigation, Venkatappa's behavior rapidly collapsed. He started drinking heavily while on duty. Sleep became impossible. Whenever he closed his eyes or stared far too long at the crossing, he saw the murdered girl. She would appear on the tracks, begging for the intervention he never gave, or grabbing his arms and violently dragging him toward the rails. Desperate to prove he wasn't going insane, he brought his wife to the crossing in the middle of the night. He pointed frantically at the tracks, demanding she look at the girl lying right in front of them. His wife stared into the dark, terrified. She saw absolutely nothing. This neurological model illustrates how extreme survivor's guilt short-circuits the brain. Failing to process the trauma, the mind creates a blocked memory loop. When overflowing, it hijacks the visual cortex, projecting hallucinations into reality, forcing the victim to confront a physical projection of their guilt. Because his family couldn't see the terror standing right in front of him, they couldn't help him fight it. Venkatappa was entirely disconnected from the physical world, locked inside a private, inescapable hell. Then, late one night during his shift, a white sedan smashed through his closed barrier and stalled squarely on the tracks. Venkatappa ran to the window. Inside, thrashing and screaming for help, were the exact same 3 men. Seconds later, a massive oncoming locomotive tore directly through the intersection, violently obliterating the vehicle and its terrified passengers. The driver survived, pinned under a broken pole. Once hospitalized, he gave police a frantic confession. They had forced the girl into human trafficking and killed her when she rebelled. But he claimed that on this night, demonic black smoke entered one of the men's mouths, possessing him and forcing the car onto the tracks. Shortly after confessing, the driver took his own life in a holding cell. For Venkatappa, this was the ultimate proof. He didn't see a criminal cracking under guilt. He saw confirmation that a literal ghost was hunting down everyone present that night. Looking at this photograph of Manya's serene, quiet landscape, you can clearly see exactly why he fled here. Terrified he was next, Venkatappa resigned, packed up his family, and relocated to his hometown, hoping the quiet fields would shield him. By running from a physical location, Venkatappa proved he didn't realize the threat was traveling inside his own head. Even hundreds of miles away, the agonizing visions of the girl never stopped. One evening, after dinner in Mandya, Venkatappa pulled his young son aside. With profound sadness, he confessed that he should have fought those 3 men at the crossing, even if it meant dying in the dirt. This scale visualizes a concept psychologists call moral injury. When a person takes an action to survive that violently contradicts their own deeply held moral code, the resulting internal conflict shatters the foundation of their mental health. He told his son he was going for a short walk. He never returned. As you can see in this daylight photo of the rural crossing, police made a grim discovery at dawn. Venkatappa's lifeless body was found lying squarely across these tracks. If you visit Yeshwanthpur today, locals insist the crossing is cursed and that a vengeful ghost finally claimed the gateman. But the clinical timeline reveals a much bleaker reality about a man whose mind collapsed under the weight of his own memories. This haunting was born in the split second Venkatappa prioritized his own life over a stranger's. Survival at any cost left him with an unresolved trauma that his mind could only process through terror. Left to fester, that guilt became a terminal disease of the human conscience.